Jackson Miller's hands trembled as he pried open the rusted steel door, buried beneath 40 centimeters of Iowa dirt. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing 3 small faces staring up from the concrete tomb, pale, hollow-eyed, barely breathing. Zeus wouldn't stop barking. 6 hours earlier, they'd all laughed at him. Just a crazy dog, they'd said, when the German shepherd clawed frantically at the barn floor. Even Jackson had hesitated, his reputation already hanging by a thread after 2 years of grief-soaked mistakes. But something in Zeus's eyes, that desperate, knowing look, made him grab the shovel anyway. Now, 3 missing children lay rescued at his feet. Tommy Barrett, Lily Connors, Jake Morrison, but just barely. Zeus leaped into the hole first, licking Tommy's cracked lips. Then the dog started barking again, deeper, pointing downward. There was something else down there. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Along with the city you're watching from now, let's continue with the story. 2 years before Zeus started barking at that barn floor, Jackson Miller had been a different man. He'd been a husband who kissed his wife goodbye every morning, a father who knew his daughter's favorite songs, a cop who believed justice could heal wounds instead of creating them. Then Sarah died, and everything shattered. The cancer took her slowly, painfully, over 18 months that felt like 18 lifetimes. Jackson watched his wife, brilliant, warm Sarah, with her sunrise smile fade into a ghost who couldn't remember his name by the end. On her last conscious day, she'd gripped his hand with what little strength remained. "Don't let Emma grow up alone," she'd whispered. "Promise me." Jackson, he'd promised. God, how he'd promised. But grief is a liar. It convinced him that bourbon could fill the hole Sarah left behind, that working double shifts meant he was providing for his daughter instead of abandoning her, that Emma's silence across the dinner table was normal teenage behavior, not a 17-year-old girl drowning in the same dark water that was pulling him under. Now, Jackson set 2 coffee cups on the kitchen counter every morning, one for himself, one that sat untouched until the liquid went cold. He couldn't stop, couldn't accept that Sarah would never again wrap her hands around that blue ceramic mug and complain that he made it too strong. Emma called him Officer Miller instead of Dad. Had for 6 months now. The mortgage was 3 months behind. Medical debt collectors called during dinner, when they bothered having dinner. Emma had withdrawn her college applications without telling him, and Jackson only found out when the guidance counselor called to ask if everything was okay at home. Nothing was okay. Nothing had been okay since the day he'd held Sarah's hand and felt it go cold. Millbrook, Iowa, wasn't supposed to have missing children. This town of 3,000 souls raised corn and soybeans, held church picnics, and knew everyone's business. But over 6 months, 3 kids had vanished like smoke. Tommy Barrett, Lily Connors, Jake Morrison. The community organized search parties that found nothing. Parents stopped letting their children play outside. Fear settled over Millbrook like late-season frost. Jackson had worked every lead into dead ends. The guilt gnawed at him. He was supposed to protect people, but he couldn't even protect himself from the bottle. Then his chief had ordered him to the animal shelter. "You need a K-9 partner for the investigation," Chief Dave Barrett had said. Dave, whose own 9-year-old son Tommy was among the missing. Dave, whose eyes carried the same haunted weight Jackson saw in his mirror. The German shepherd sat in the corner kennel. 7 years old according to the paperwork, retired early after his handler died in the line of duty, dark brown and black coat, intelligent amber eyes, and a long scar running down his left flank. The dog stared at Jackson like he'd been waiting for him specifically. Zeus, the tag read. When Jackson clipped the leash on, Zeus stood immediately and pressed against his leg, solid, warm, certain. The blue collar around the dog's neck looked worn and faded, hand-stitched with care. Something about it tugged at Jackson's memory, but the thought dissolved before he could catch it. Emma barely glanced up when Jackson brought Zeus home that evening. She was doing homework at the kitchen table, blonde hair cut short and uneven, like she'd taken scissors to it herself. "We have a dog now?" she asked flatly. "Police dog for work. Whatever, Officer Miller." Zeus walked directly to Emma and sat beside her chair, resting his chin on her knee. For the first time in months, Jackson saw his daughter's expression soften. She touched the dog's head hesitantly, and Zeus's tail swept the floor twice. "He likes you," Jackson said quietly. Emma didn't respond, but she didn't move her hand away either that night. Zeus slept in the hallway between their bedrooms. Jackson lay awake listening to the dog's steady breathing and thought about promises he'd broken. He didn't know yet that Zeus was about to help him keep the only one that mattered. Zeus refused breakfast on the 7th morning, the first time since Jackson had brought him home. The dog stood at the kitchen window, staring west toward the cornfields, a low whine building in his throat. "What's wrong with him?" Emma asked, pausing with her backpack halfway to her shoulder. It was the first direct question she'd asked Jackson in weeks. "I don't know." Jackson checked the dog over, finding nothing obvious, no fever, no injuries, no signs of illness. But Zeus kept returning to that window, ears forward, body tense. The dog barked once, sharp and insistent. Toward the distant tree line where the old Hutchinson barn stood abandoned among overgrown fields. By noon, the call came in. "Officer Miller." The voice belonged to Mrs. Henderson, 82 years old and sharp as broken glass. "I saw lights in that old barn last night, the Hutchinson place, you know the one. And I heard crying, sounded like a child." Jackson took the call standing in Chief Barrett's office. Dave looked up from his desk, hope and dread warring across his weathered face. 6 months since his son Tommy vanished, and the man had aged a decade. "I'll check it out," Jackson said. "Take backup," Dave ordered, but his voice cracked. "And take that dog of yours." Something flickered in Dave's expression. Guilt, maybe, or fear, but it vanished before Jackson could pin it down. The Hutchinson barn sat 2 miles west, surrounded by cornfields that had gone to seed years ago. The structure leaned slightly, wood silvered with age and weather, roof sagging in the middle. Nobody had used it for 15 years, not since old man Hutchinson died and his children moved to Des Moines. Jackson pulled up with 2 young officers, Stevens and Rodriguez, both fresh enough that they still believed every call would be the one that mattered. Zeus leaped from the vehicle before Jackson fully stopped, hitting the ground running. The dog went straight for the barn's open door and disappeared inside. "Probably just rats," Stevens said, grinning. "Big waste of time." But Jackson was already moving. Something in his chest had tightened the moment Zeus bolted. Call it instinct, call it desperation. He didn't care. He followed the dog inside. The barn's interior was exactly what he'd expected: rotting wood, rust-eaten tools, hay bales decomposing into mulch. Sunlight streamed through gaps in the walls, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits. Zeus stood in the southwest corner, digging frantically at the dirt floor. Soil flew between his hind legs as he burrowed, snarling and barking in a way Jackson had never heard before. "Zeus, heel!" Jackson commanded. The dog ignored him completely, kept digging, kept barking. Stevens and Rodriguez wandered in, laughing. "Your dog's chasing a groundhog. Miller, he's trained better than both of you," Jackson snapped. Something about Zeus's behavior set every nerve on edge. This wasn't play. This wasn't prey drive. This was purpose. Within 20 minutes, word spread. Volunteers arrived, farmers, teachers, the Methodist minister. Among them came Dr. William Thorn, the town physician. Still wearing his white coat from the clinic, he'd been treating Jackson for insomnia since Sarah died, never charging him full price. "Jackson," Thorn said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder, "you look exhausted. Are you sure about this?" Behind him, Martha Hayes nodded sympathetically. Martha had been Sarah's hospice nurse, had held Jackson's hand through those final terrible nights. She worked at Dr. Thorne's clinic now. "Maybe the dog's just confused," Martha offered. "You've been under so much stress." Zeus snarled at them both, then returned to digging. Jackson stared at the disturbed earth. 20 people thought he was crazy. The town already whispered about the grieving cop who couldn't save his wife, couldn't find the missing children, or couldn't keep his own daughter from hating him. But Zeus wouldn't stop. The dog's paws were bleeding now, claws torn, but he kept going. And when Zeus looked back at Jackson, those amber eyes held something that looked almost human, pleading, trusting, certain. Jackson had broken every promise to Sarah except one. He'd promised to protect their daughter. And standing in that barn, watching a scarred, retired police dog dig himself bloody because he knew something no human could see, Jackson realized he'd been given one last chance. "Get me a shovel," he said. Stevens rolled his eyes. "Come on, man. Get me a goddamn shovel." Someone handed him one. Jackson drove it into the earth where Zeus had been digging. The volunteers muttered amongst themselves. Emma appeared in the doorway. She'd followed him from school for the first time in months. She stood beside him instead of away. "Dad," she whispered, and the word hit him harder than any blow. "Do you really think—" "I don't know," Jackson admitted, "but he does." He dug. 20 minutes passed, 30. His shoulders screamed. Sweat soaked through his shirt, despite the mild weather. Then the shovel hit metal. The barn went silent. Jackson dug faster, hands shaking. Zeus barked continuously now, pacing at the hole's edge. More soil, but more metal. The shape emerged a steel door, roughly 1 meter square, set flush with a wooden frame. A padlock, rusted but intact, held it shut. Dr. Thorn stepped closer, his face pale. "Dear God, what is this?" Chief Barrett arrived right then, pushing through the crowd. When he saw the door, his knees nearly buckled. "No," he whispered. "No, please." Jackson broke the lock with a crowbar. The door shrieked open on corroded hinges. The smell that rushed out made everyone gag human waste, fear, and something worse underneath. The smell of dying hope. Jackson's flashlight beam cut into the darkness. 3 faces looked up at him from the concrete pit below. Tommy Barrett lay curled against the wall, 9 years old and skeletal, his lips cracked and bleeding. Lily Connors, 7, didn't move at all, just the faint rise and fall of her chest, proving she still lived. Jake Morrison, 10, held his knees and rocked gishmently, eyes vacant. The underground cell measured maybe 2 meters by 3, barely tall enough for Jackson to stand upright, a thin mattress, empty water bottles, a plastic bucket in the corner that explained the smell, and darkness. God, the darkness these children had endured. Jackson dropped into the hole without thinking. His knees hit concrete hard enough to send pain shooting up his spine, but he didn't care. Zeus jumped down beside him, moving immediately to Tommy, licking the boy's face with desperate gentleness. "Tommy," Jackson breathed. "Tommy, can you hear me?" The boy's eyes opened, unfocused. His lips moved soundlessly. Then his small arms wrapped around Zeus's neck, and he began to sob dry. Painful sounds from a throat too parched for tears. "Get EMTs here now," Jackson shouted up, "and water, carefully small sips." Emma's face appeared at the opening above, white as bone. "Oh, my God! Dad! Don't look, sweetheart. Go help direct the ambulance." But she didn't move, couldn't move. Behind her, Martha Hayes had her hand over her mouth, and Dr. Thorn had gone absolutely pale, swaying where he stood. Chief Barrett pushed through and looked down at his son. The sound that came from his throat wasn't quite human. He tried to climb down, but Stevens and Rodriguez caught him, held him back as he fought and screamed Tommy's name. Jackson lifted Lily as carefully as he could. She weighed nothing. Her skin felt papery and too hot. "Hang on," he whispered. "Just hang on. You're safe now." The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, a miracle in rural Iowa. They set up IV lines right there in the pit, rehydrating the children with agonizing slowness. Too fast could kill them. Jackson knew that much from his basic training. But every second that passed while these kids suffered felt like a betrayal. Zeus refused to leave Tommy's side. The boy kept one hand buried in the dog's fur, clinging like Zeus was the only real thing in the world. Jake Morrison hadn't spoken a word, hadn't even acknowledged the rescue. He just rocked and rocked and rocked. As they lifted the children out on stretchers, Jackson noticed something that made his detective instincts flare. Medical tape on Lily's arm, the professional kind used in hospitals. 3M brand, sterile application. The wound beneath had been cleaned and bandaged with care. He examined the space more carefully with his flashlight. Sealed water bottles, not contaminated, sandwiches in Ziploc bags, relatively fresh, a thin blanket, folded in the corner, a bucket with a lid to contain the smell. This wasn't a torture chamber. It was a cell designed to keep someone alive. "The person who did this has medical knowledge," Jackson said quietly to himself. Zeus's ears perked up at his voice. But then Zeus started barking again, not at the freed children being carried to ambulances, at the floor, at the far corner where shadow pooled deepest. "What is it, boy?" Zeus pawed at the ground, whining, the same desperate sound he'd made before they found the first door. Jackson's blood went cold. "No, please, no!" He grabbed the shovel someone had dropped and dug where Zeus indicated, 50 centimeters down. His blade struck wood, a second door, taller, older. His hand shook so badly he could barely clear the dirt away. This lock had rusted through completely. The wood beneath had begun to rot. "Miller? "What are you doing?" Dr. Thorn called down. "Those children need to get to the hospital. Come up. There's something else down here." "What?" "That's impossible." Jackson wrenched open the second door. The smell that emerged was different, not waste and fear, but death, old death, complete death. Two small skeletons lay on a wooden pallet below. Children's clothing rotted to rags, a school T-shirt, the logo still faintly visible, Millbrook Elementary. Jackson's mind raced through missing persons reports. 2 years ago, before Tommy, before Lily, before Jake, 2 children had vanished during summer vacation. Sarah had still been alive then, still healthy enough to volunteer in the search parties. The cases had gone cold. Everyone assumed they'd run away. Maybe caught rides to Des Moines or Chicago. Nobody had suspected murder. "There are 2 more," Jackson called up, his voice hollow. "They've been dead a long time." The crowd above erupted in chaos, screaming, crying. Chief Barrett collapsed completely, being held up by his officers. Because if there were 2 dead children before his son was taken, that meant Tommy had been lying in a tomb beside corpses. That meant the kidnapper had done this before, had killed before. Martha Hayes made a sound like a wounded animal and ran from the barn. Dr. Thorn stood frozen, staring down at Jackson with an expression that was hard to read in the dim light. Horror shock. Something else. Zeus climbed back up out of the pit on his own, shaking dirt from his coat. The dog walked to Emma and sat beside her, pressing his body against her legs. She sank down, buried her face in his fur, and finally let herself cry. Jackson hauled himself out of the hole, muscles trembling. Forensics was already being called. The barn would become a crime scene, processed for weeks. Those children's remains would be identified through dental records and DNA. But the living victims were already in ambulances, sirens wailing as they raced toward Millbrook General Hospital. Tommy Barrett, severely dehydrated but alive. Lily Connors, critical condition but breathing. Jake Morrison, physically stable but psychologically shattered. 3 children saved, 2 found too late. And somewhere in this town of 3,000 souls, a monster was watching. Chief Barrett finally managed to speak, his voice wrecked. "My son was down there in that darkness for 6 months." Jackson wanted to comfort him, wanted to say something about resilience, about Tommy being found alive, but the words died in his throat because something about Dave's reaction felt wrong. The man had looked terrified when he saw the metal door, not surprised, not shocked, terrified, like he'd known, like he'd expected to find it. Dr. Thorn put a steadying hand on Dave's shoulder. "We should all get to the hospital. Those children will need us." "Of course," Dave whispered. "Of course they will." As the crowd dispersed, Jackson stood in that barn holding his daughter, while Zeus sat alert between them. The dog had found 3 living children and 2 dead ones, had saved Tommy, Lily, and Jake from dying of dehydration, maybe another day or 2 away. Emma looked up at her father, and for the first time in 2 years, really saw him. "You trusted him," she said quietly. "When everyone was laughing, you trusted Zeus." "I did? Why?" Jackson looked at the German shepherd, at those knowing amber eyes, at the faded blue collar that still tugged at something in his memory he couldn't quite reach. "Because your mother used to tell me that dogs don't lie, They don't know how." Emma's breath caught. It was the first time Jackson had mentioned Sarah without his voice breaking. "Dad," Emma said, testing the word, "I think Zeus just saved more than those kids." Jackson pulled his daughter close, and over her shoulder he watched Zeus staring back into the barn shadows. The dog's hackles were raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The danger wasn't over, not even close. The hospital waiting room smelled like industrial cleaner and bad coffee. Jackson sat with his third cup growing cold in his hands, Emma asleep against his shoulder, Zeus lying alert at their feet. It was 3 in the morning, and they were the only family who'd stayed. The Connors and Morrison families had gone home hours ago, reassured that Lily and Jake would survive. Chief Barrett had taken Tommy to a private room, refusing all visitors. But Jackson couldn't leave, not until he understood. Detective Laura Bennett arrived at dawn, sharp-eyed and professional despite the hour. She'd driven in from the state police headquarters in Des Moines, taking over the investigation the moment it became clear Millbrook was dealing with a serial kidnapper. The medical examiner confirmed the remains are from 2 children who went missing 26 months ago. She told Jackson in the hallway. Ethan Walsh, 8. Sophie Chin, 7. Both died from complications related to sedation overdose. Whoever held them didn't mean to kill them, did she? They just didn't know the right dosage. Jackson's stomach turned. He was experimenting, learning how to keep them alive. That's our theory. Laura pulled out a tablet showing crime scene photos, the professional medical tape. The sterile bandaging on Lily's arm were looking for someone with health care training. Half the town works at the clinic or hospital. I know, but look at this. She swiped to a photo of the underground cell. This construction took planning, concrete reinforcement, ventilation shafts hidden in the barn walls. This wasn't improvised. Someone built this years ago, maybe when the barn was still in use. Emma stirred awake, rubbing her eyes. What are you guys talking about? Nothing you need to hear, sweetheart, Jackson said, but Emma fixed him with a look that reminded him painfully of Sarah. Those kids are my age. Dad, I deserve to know. She was right. Of course. Jackson had spent 2 years treating Emma like she was too fragile for the truth, when really he was the one who couldn't face it. We're trying to figure out who did this, he admitted. Zeus suddenly stood, ears forward, his gaze locked on something down the hallway. Jackson followed the dog's line of sight to where Dr. Thorn stood outside Tommy Barrett's room, speaking quietly with a nurse. When the physician noticed them watching, he offered a tired smile and walked over. Those children are incredibly fortunate you found them. Jackson, Dr. Thorn said, another day or two, and we'd be looking at multiple fatalities from dehydration. Tommy's talking yet. Not much. Severe trauma. He keeps asking for the dog, actually. De Thorn looked down at Zeus. Remarkable animal you have there, Zeus growled, low, threatening. The fur along his spine rose. Zeus, enough, Jackson commanded. But the dog didn't stand down. He positioned himself between Dr. Thorn and Emma, hackles raised. Sorry, he's usually not. It's fine. Dr. Thorn interrupted quickly. Animals can sense stress. I should check on my other patients. He nodded to Laura and left, but Jackson noticed his hands were trembling. Emma whispered, Zeus doesn't like him. Zeus doesn't like anyone right now, Jackson replied, but his detective instincts were firing. He turned to Laura. "Can you pull Dr. Thorn's background? Just routine." Laura's expression sharpened. Something specific triggered that request. "Call it a hunch." Yeah, afternoon. Jackson was back at the station running through evidence when Laura burst into his office. "We got something. I had forensics go over that fabric scrap Zeus found in the cell. It's from a medical coat, the kind worn at Millbrook Clinic." Jackson's pulse quickened. Half the staff there. "But here's the thing. The fabric has trace amounts of propofol and midazolam, the exact sedatives used on those kids." She laid out a file. "I pulled pharmaceutical records. 3 people have access to those drugs in the necessary quantities. To Thorn, to Jennifer Price, and Martha Hayes." Jackson finished. The hospice nurse who'd cared for Sarah, who'd been so kind, so gentle, who'd been at the barn yesterday, looking horrified or looking caught. "I'm bringing them all in for questioning," Laura said. "But, Jackson, you should know I did that background check. Dr. Thorn lost his daughter 3 years ago. Grace Thorn, age 16. Car accident. You were the officer who notified him." The memory crashed back. Standing on Thorn's porch in the rain, watching a father's world end. Grace had been blonde, blue-eyed, beautiful. Jackson had thought at the time that she looked a bit like Emma. He pulled up Grace's photo from the accident report and set it beside a recent school photo of Emma. They could have been sisters. "Jesus," Jackson breathed. "He's been watching her." Laura immediately dispatched units to check on Emma, but Jackson's daughter was safely at home with the Zeus. He'd insisted she stay there, door locked, dog on guard. Instead, they went to Dr. Thorn's clinic for a routine follow-up on the victims. Zeus came along, officially assisting. The dog went straight for the basement door, scratching and whining. "What's down there?" Jackson asked the receptionist. "Just storage, medical supplies, old files." "I need to see it." The receptionist called Dr. Thorn, who emerged from an exam room looking genuinely confused. "Jackson, what's this about?" "Your basement. I need access. There's nothing down there but boxes." "This seems excessive," Zeus barked, sharp and insistent. Scratched harder at the door. Laura's hand moved to her weapon. "Dr. Thorn, please open the door." The physician's face went carefully blank. "I want my lawyer present. For a storage room. For whatever you're clearly about to accuse me of." Jackson used the master key the receptionist provided. The basement stairs descended into darkness. Zeus bounded down immediately, and Jackson followed with flashlight drawn. Medical storage, as promised, shelves of supplies, filing cabinets, a refrigerator for temperature-sensitive medications. Nothing unusual until Zeus nosed open an unlocked cabinet in the far corner. Inside propofol, midazolam, sedation drugs, an entire pharmacy's worth. "That's locked inventory," Dr. Thorn said from the stairs. "I have legitimate medical reasons for quantities like this." Laura pulled out a vial. "This is enough to sedate a small army." "Doctor." Zeus kept searching, pawing at a filing cabinet. Jackson opened it and found patient records, routine stuff. But Zeus wouldn't stop. The dog barked at the cabinet's back panel. Jackson knocked on the wood. It sounded hollow. He pulled out the drawers completely and found a false back. Behind it, a small space containing a locked metal box. Don't open that without a warrant, Dr. Thorn said, his voice rising. Exigent circumstances, Laura replied. If that box contains evidence of ongoing danger. Jackson broke the lock. Inside photographs, dozens of them. Emma walking to school, Emma at the grocery store, Emma through her bedroom window at night. Months of surveillance, dated and organized. And beneath those, older photos. Grace Thorn at the same ages, in similar poses. A father's obsessive documentation of his lost daughter and his search for a replacement. Jackson's vision tunneled. His hands shook so badly the photos scattered across the floor. You've been stalking my daughter. It's not like that, Dr. Thorne said quickly. I would never hurt her. She reminds me of Grace. I only wanted to watch over her to make sure she was safe. After Sarah died, you were falling apart, and Emma was so alone, and I thought you'd take her. Jackson lunged forward, but Laura caught him. We're arresting you for possession of controlled substances and stalking, Laura announced, and we're getting a warrant for your home and any other properties. Dr. Thorne's calm finally cracked. You don't understand. Those children, I was taking care of them. They needed me. Their parents didn't appreciate them, didn't protect them properly. I gave them safety, structure, medical care. You buried them alive, Jackson snarled. I kept them safe. Zeus lunged at Dr. Thorne, teeth bared. Jackson barely caught the leash in time. The dog's rage was palpable. Primal, ouch! They arrested Thorne on the spot as they led him out in handcuffs. He kept talking. I would never have hurt Emma. I loved Grace too much. Emma deserves better than a father who drinks himself unconscious every night, who can't even look at her without seeing his dead wife. Jackson punched him. One solid hit to the jaw that sent Thorne sprawling. Laura didn't even try to stop it. At the station, Martha Hayes was already in interrogation. When confronted with the evidence, she broke within minutes. I love William, she sobbed. He's a good man who lost everything. He just needed help. Those children reminded him of Grace, gave him purpose again. I only helped him care for them. Care for them? Laura's voice was ice. 2 children are dead. Martha. That was an accident. William was devastated. He learned from those mistakes. The others were fine until you found them. Where's his cabin? Jackson demanded. Dave Barrett mentioned a cabin. Martha's eyes went wide. Too wide. I don't know what. Tell me where it is, or I charge you with 5 counts of kidnapping and 2 counts of murder. She gave them the address, 50 miles north, deep in state forest land, a place Dr. Thorne had inherited from his father, off any official records. Jackson was in his truck before Laura could organize a proper team. Zeus leaped into the passenger seat, and Emma, who'd somehow heard everything over the police scanner she'd been monitoring, jumped in the back. Emma, no. He was stalking me. Dad, I'm not staying home alone. There wasn't time to argue. Jackson floored it. His phone rang halfway there, the hospital. Tommy Barrett had finally started talking, and what he said made Jackson's blood freeze. There's another kid, the nurse reported. Tommy says there's a 4th child. The doctor took him away a week ago. Jackson's foot pressed harder on the accelerator. Zeus was already barking at the windshield, as if he could sense what they were racing toward. Somewhere in those woods, another child was waiting, and Jackson was terrified they'd be too late. The cabin emerged from the pine forest like a wound-weathered cedar and broken windows, surrounded by wilderness that swallowed sound. Jackson killed the engine 200 yards out and radioed his position. SWAT was 20 minutes behind. Laura was coordinating from town. Every instinct screamed at him to wait for backup. But Zeus was already out of the truck, nose to the ground, tracking. "Dad, what do we do?" Emma's voice shook. "You stay in the truck. Doors locked. If anything happens, you drive away and don't look back." "I'm not leaving you." "Emma, I said I'm not leaving." Her voice cracked. "I already lost Mom. I'm not losing you, too." Jackson looked at his daughter, 17 years old, and fierce in the way Sarah had been fierce, refusing to let fear make decisions. He pulled his service weapon and checked the magazine. "Stay behind me. Don't make a sound." Zeus led them through underbrush, moving with purpose. The cabin had a front entrance and a back door, both visible from where they crouched. Martha's Civic sat parked on the side. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Someone was home. Jackson's radio crackled softly. "Miller, SWAT is 15 minutes out. Do not course to me engaged." He clicked the radio off. 15 minutes might be 14 minutes too late. Zeus stopped at the back door, hackles raised, a low, continuous growl rumbled in his chest. Jackson tried the handle, unlocked. The door swung open silently on recently oiled hinges. The cabin's interior was grotesque in its normalcy. Clean kitchen, floral wallpaper, photographs on the mantel, pictures of Grace Thorn at every age, smiling, alive. And new photos. Recently added Emma at school. Emma laughing, Emma sleeping. Jackson's stomach lurched. His hand tightened on his weapon. Zeus moved deeper into the cabin, toward a closed door. Jackson followed. Emma so close behind him she was almost stepping on his heels. Every board creaked. Every breath sounded too loud. The door opened to reveal Martha Hayes standing in the living room, holding a kitchen knife. Her face was blotchy from crying. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Don't come any closer," she warned. "I'll use this." "Where's the child?" "Martha." "William just wanted a family again. Is that so wrong?" The knife trembled in her grip. "He's a good man, a healer. He saved so many people in this town. He kidnapped 5 children. 2 of them died. Those were accidents. Mistakes he learned." Zeus barked, sharp and urgent, looking at the floor, at a rug that didn't quite lay flat. Jackson's heart stopped. Another door, another basement. Martha put down the knife. "He loves Emma, you know. He'll take better care of her than you ever did. You're a drunk who couldn't save his own wife. What kind of father are you?" Emma flinched behind Jackson. He felt her pain like a physical blow because Martha wasn't wrong. He had failed Sarah, had failed Emma every day since. "You're right," Jackson said quietly. "I've been a terrible father, but I'm here now, and I'm not letting anyone take my daughter." Martha lunged. Jackson fired one shot to her shoulder, spinning her sideways. The knife clattered across the floor. Emma screamed. Zeus bolted past them both. Clawing at the rug, Jackson zip-tied Martha while she sobbed, then threw back the rug, a trap door, just like the barn. His hand shook as he pulled it open. "Emma, call SWAT. Tell them we need medical. Dad, now." She ran for the radio in the truck. Jackson descended wooden stairs into darkness. Zeus ahead of him, flashlight beam cutting through the black. The basement was different from the barn's pit. This was furnished, a bed with clean sheets, a nightstand with children's books, a lamp throwing warm light, almost like a bedroom, if you ignored the lack of windows and the heavy lock on the outside of the door. On the bed sat a boy, maybe 11 years old, wearing pajamas that were too clean, too new. He looked up at Jackson with dazed eyes, sedated but conscious. "Are you a policeman?" the boy asked slowly, slurring. "Yes. What's your name?" Liam Foster." He blinked slowly. "Am I going home?" Jackson's throat closed. "Yes, you're going home." "The doctor said I couldn't. He said my real family didn't want me anymore. He said I was his son now." Zeus approached the bed carefully, gently, and rested his chin on Liam's leg. The boy's hand moved to touch the dog's head, and something in his drugged expression cracked. Tears started falling. "I want my mom," Liam whispered. "I want to go home." Jackson gathered the boy in his arms. Liam weighed nothing, wasted from months of captivity. "I've got you. You're safe now." Carrying Liam up those stairs felt like climbing out of hell itself. Emma met them at the top, phone in hand, tears streaming down her face. "SWAT's here. Ambulance is 2 minutes out." Officers poured into the cabin. Martha was taken away, still screaming that they didn't understand, that William was protecting these children, that everyone was wrong about him. The paramedics treated Liam right there on the cabin's porch. Dehydration, malnutrition, sedation overdose risk. They started an IV, wrapped him in warming blankets, spoke to him in soft voices. "My parents?" Liam asked. "Do they know?" "We're calling them right now," Laura Bennett said, appearing from nowhere. She squeezed the Jackson's shoulder. "You got him. You got the fourth one." But Jackson couldn't feel relief, because Emma was crying, and Zeus was still on alert, and something felt incomplete, like a story with a missing page. "Where's Thorn?" Jackson asked. Laura's expression darkened. "He asked for his lawyer at the station. We're processing him now. He's not fighting it. Actually, he confessed to everything. Said he wanted to explain himself properly. Said we don't understand loss the way he does." She paused. "He also said Emma reminds him of Grace so much it hurts to breathe. Said he's been watching her for 18 months, since right after Sarah died. Said he was waiting for the right time." Jackson felt Emma press against his side. His daughter, who he'd failed to protect, who'd been in a predator's sights for over a year while Jackson drowned in bourbon and grief. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I should have seen it. Should have protected you." "You did protect me, You're here now." The ambulance took Liam away, sirens wailing into the forest. His parents were being notified they'd reported him missing 4 months ago from the neighboring county. 4 months of not knowing, and now their son was coming home. 3 children saved from the barn, 1 from the cabin, 4 lives pulled back from darkness, but 2 small skeletons still waiting for proper burial. 2 families who would never get their children back. Jackson sat on the cabin steps as the sun began to set. Emma on one side, Zeus on the other. The dog was finally calm, finally at rest, his job complete. "Zeus knew," Emma said quietly. "He knew where to dig, where to search, How did he know, Dad? Jackson had been wondering the same thing. This dog who'd appeared in his life exactly when he needed him most. This scarred veteran with the hand-stitched blue collar and the knowing eyes. I don't know, Jackson admitted. But I'm glad he did. Laura approached with a file folder. Jackson, there's something else. About Zeus. His stomach dropped. What? When I ran background on everyone, I checked the dog's records, too. Standard procedure. She sat down beside them. Zeus was retired early because his handler died in the line of duty 10 years ago, Officer Ryan Cooper. And according to the records, she stopped, looking between Jackson and Emma with an expression that was half wonder, half sorrow. Ryan Cooper was married when he died. His widow's name was Sarah Cooper. She remarried 2 years later. To you, the world tilted. Jackson stared at Laura, at the file in her hands, trying to process words that didn't make sense. That's impossible. Sarah, she told me she'd never been married before. She lied, Laura said gently. Maybe because she didn't want you to feel like a replacement. Maybe because it hurt too much to talk about. But Zeus was Ryan Cooper's K-9 partner. And according to this letter we found in the shelter's records, she handed Jackson a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. His name was written on the front in handwriting he didn't recognize. Jackson opened it with shaking hands. Emma read over his shoulder. The letter was dated 10 years ago, the day Ryan Cooper died. To whoever loves Sarah next, my name is Ryan Cooper. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and Sarah has found someone new. I hope she found you. I hope you make her happy. I'm leaving Zeus in the shelter with instructions he's to be held until Sarah needs him. She'll know when. Dogs live longer than 10 years if they're lucky. And Zeus is the luckiest dog I know. When Sarah's time comes, or when her family needs protecting, release Zeus. He'll find them. He always finds his way home. Take care of my family. They're yours now. And Zeus will take care of you, Ryan. Jackson couldn't breathe. His vision blurred with tears he'd been holding back for 2 years. Zeus looked at him with those amber eyes. And suddenly Jackson understood the way Zeus had come to him right after Sarah's death. The way the dog protected Emma like she was his own. The hand-stitched blue collar that Sarah must have made years ago for her first husband's partner. Ryan sent you, Jackson whispered to Zeus. Sarah's dying wish brought you to us. Emma was sobbing now, her arms wrapped around Zeus's neck. Mom sent you to protect us. She kept her promise. Zeus licked her face, then Jackson's hand. And for the first time since Sarah died, Jackson felt like he could breathe properly, like some cosmic circle had closed. He's been watching over us this whole time, Emma said, waiting for the moment we needed him most. Laura stood up, giving them privacy. The press is going to be brutal on this case. Small-town doctor, respected pillar of the community, turned kidnapper. It'll be national news by morning. Let it, Jackson said. Let everyone know what he was. And what you are, Laura added. The cop who trusted his dog enough to dig. The father who saved 4 children. But Jackson didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who'd been given an impossible gift, a second chance, delivered by a dog who'd waited a decade to fulfill a promise. "Come on," he said to Emma. "Let's go home." The three of them walked back to the truck through deepening twilight. Zeus moved between them, steady and sure, the way he'd been trained to do a lifetime ago by a man who'd loved Sarah first. And Jackson made a silent promise to Ryan Cooper. "Wherever his soul was, I'll protect them. For both of us. For all of us." Zeus barked once, soft and certain, as if he understood, as if he approved. Jackson woke to his phone ringing at 6 in the morning. He'd been home less than 4 hours, had fallen asleep on the couch with Zeus on the floor beside him, and Emma curled in the armchair. For the first time in 2 years, his daughter had chosen to be in the same room with him. The caller ID showed Millbrook Elementary. His blood went cold. "Officer Miller, this is Principal Hendricks. Emma didn't show up for school this morning. We tried her cell, but—" Jackson dropped the phone, ran to Emma's bedroom. Empty bed, window open, cold morning air rushing through white curtains. Zeus was already at the window, barking frantically. On Emma's pillow lay a note in handwriting that wasn't hers. The letters shaky, forced. "Dad, I'm going to find Zeus. Don't worry, Emma." But Emma was sleeping in the armchair 10 feet away when Jackson fell asleep, and Zeus was right here. Someone had written this note to buy time. Someone had taken his daughter. Jackson's hands shook so violently he could barely hold the paper. His vision tunneled. Every nightmare he'd imagined for 2 years was manifesting. He'd saved 4 children, only to lose his own, Emma. He tore through the house, checking every room, every closet. Nothing. Zeus stayed at that open window, hackles raised, snarling at something Jackson couldn't see. He called Laura Bennett. "Emma's gone. Someone took her from her bedroom while we were sleeping." "Jackson, slow down. Thorn is in custody. Martha's in custody. Who?" "I don't know." His voice broke. "But there's a ransom note that's not from her, and her window's open, and—" He couldn't finish. Couldn't say the words. Laura was already mobilizing. "Stay there. We're coming." But Jackson couldn't stay. He reviewed the house's security camera, the basic system he'd installed after Sarah died. The footage showed a figure approaching Emma's window at 4 a.m., medium build, dark clothes, face obscured. The person used a glass cutter to quietly remove the window pane, climbed through, and emerged 8 minutes later carrying Emma's limp body, drugged. His daughter had been drugged and carried away while he slept 30 feet away. Jackson watched the footage 4 times, trying to identify anything gate, clothing, vehicle, but the figure disappeared into darkness, moving toward the street where cameras didn't reach. Zeus wouldn't stop barking. The dog paced between the window and the front door, desperate to pursue. "Find her," Jackson commanded, clipping on Zeus's leash. "Find Emma." Zeus bolted. Jackson dared behind him, still in yesterday's clothes, weapon holstered, radio clipped to his belt. The dog tracked through neighbors' yards, across the elementary school playground, toward downtown Millbrook, toward the police station. That's when Jackson's radio crackled with Laura's voice, tight with controlled panic. "Jackson, we have a situation at the station. Chief Barrett he's asking for you. Says he needs to confess something." "I don't give a damn about Barrett. My daughter is missing." "Jackson, listen to me. He says he knows where Emma is." The world stopped. Zeus pulled harder on the leash, dragging Jackson toward the station. The dog had known, was already taking him there. Jackson burst through the station doors to chaos, officers shouting, phones ringing, Detective Bennett in the conference room with Chief Dave Barrett, who sat with his head in his hands. When Dave looked up, his face was the color of old newspaper. "I knew," Dave whispered. "God forgive me. Jackson, I knew." Jackson's fist connected with Dave's jaw before anyone could stop him. The chief went sprawling, blood spurting from his nose. Officers grabbed Jackson, pulled him back, but he fought like a wild animal. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" Dave spat blood and spoke through split lips. 6 months ago, when Tommy was taken, Dr. Thorn came to me, showed me proof he had my son, said if I reported him, Tommy would die. Said he just needed time, that he wasn't hurting the children, that he was caring for them. You knew children were being held captive. And you said nothing. Laura's voice was ice. "He threatened my son." Dave's voice cracked. "What was I supposed to do?" "Your job," Jackson snarled. "You were supposed to do your goddamn job. How many children suffered because you were a coward?" Dave's face crumpled. "When Lily and Jake went missing, I knew they were in that barn, too. I wanted to tell you. I swear I did. But Thorn said one word to police, and he'd kill all three. I thought if I just waited, he'd let them go. I thought Tommy would come home. But then I found them," Jackson said, "and you still didn't tell me about Thorn. I was going to after the forensics, after we had evidence. But then you arrested him so fast, and I thought it was over. I thought we were safe. What does this have to do with Emma?" Dave's eyes filled with tears. "This morning, 4 a.m., I got a call from Martha Hayes. She'd been released on bail. Her lawyer got her out yesterday evening. She said Dr. Thorn wants one thing. He'll trade information about where Emma is being held, but only if we drop all charges and let him go." Jackson's world tilted. "That's extortion." "That's our reality," Laura said grimly. "Thorn confessed to everything, so we have him dead to rights. But he's claiming there's a third accomplice we don't know about, someone who has Emma right now, following his instructions. If we don't release Thorn, this person will—" She couldn't finish. "Will what?" Jackson's voice was hollow. "Say it. We'll do to Emma what was done to Ethan Walsh and Sophie Chen, the two who died." Jackson's knees buckled. Officers caught him, helped him to a chair. Zeus pressed against his legs, whining. "That's a bluff," Laura said firmly. "He's lying to escape custody. We'll find Emma through the investigation." "You don't understand," Dave interrupted. "I know there's a third person. Thorn told me months ago. He had help, someone local, someone no one would suspect. He never gave me a name, but he said if anything went wrong, this person would finish what he started." Jackson looked at Dave Barrett, this man he'd trusted for 20 years, who'd betrayed everything their badge stood for. "You should have told me. You should have told someone." "I know." Dave's voice broke completely. "My silence helped him take more children, helped him watch Emma for 18 months, and now she's paying for my cowardice." Jackson stood, his decision made. "Bring me to Thorn." "Jackson, you can't negotiate with him," Laura protested. "Watch me." They escorted Jackson to the holding cells. Dr. William Thorn sat on a bench, still in his bloodied white coat from the arrest. When he saw Jackson, he smiled. "Officer Miller, I was hoping we could talk." Jackson pressed against the bars. "Where is my daughter?" "Safe. For now. being cared for by someone who understands my vision. Thorn's voice was maddeningly calm. Emma is special, Jackson. She reminds me so much of Grace. Same spirit, same fire. She deserves better than a broken drunk for a father, but if you hurt her, I would never hurt her. I love her. Thorn stood, approached the bars. But my associate doesn't share my restraint. If I'm not released within 12 hours, they'll sedate Emma permanently. No pain, just sleep. The same peaceful sleep I gave to Grace's memorial. Jackson's stomach turned. You're insane. I'm a father who lost everything. You understand that, don't you? Sarah's death destroyed you. Grace's death destroyed me. The difference is I found a way to heal. By kidnapping children, by giving them the love and protection their negligent parents couldn't provide. Thorn's eyes gleamed. Tommy Barrett's father knew he was missing and did nothing for months. The Connors worked 16-hour days, barely saw Lily. Jake Morrison's parents were divorcing, using him as a weapon. I saved those children from neglect. You buried them alive. I gave them structure, safety, medical care, a father who actually cared. Thorn leaned closer. Emma has been starving for a father's attention for 2 years. I can give her what you can't. Jackson grabbed the bars so hard his knuckles went white. Tell me who has her. Release me first. That's not happening. Then Emma has approximately 11 hours before the sedation becomes permanent. Thorn returned to his bench. Clock's ticking. Officer Miller, what's more important, justice or your daughter's life? Jackson turned away before he could do something that would end his career. Laura met him outside the cell block. We're not releasing him, she said firmly. I've got the FBI on the way. We'll find Emma. In 11 hours, in a town of 3,000 with 100 abandoned buildings and 1,000 acres of forest. Jackson's voice rose. We have no leads, no suspects, nothing. We have Zeus. Jackson looked down at the German shepherd, who'd been silently watching the entire exchange. The dog had found 4 children already. Could he find one more Zeus? Jackson knelt, gripping the dog's face. Find Emma. Please, boy, find her. Zeus's tail wagged once. He pressed his nose to Jackson's hand, then turned and walked toward the station exit. They followed. The dog led them through downtown Millbrook, past the clinic, past the church, straight to Martha Hayes's house. We already searched there, Laura said. It was clean. But Zeus scratched at the front door, insistent. Laura picked the lock exigent circumstances. She'd argue later. They entered Martha's perfectly normal home. Floral wallpaper, doily-covered furniture, photos of her with Dr. Thorn at various town events. Zeus went straight to the basement door. We checked the basement, one officer said. Nothing but a washer and dryer. Zeus barked, wouldn't stop barking. Jackson opened the basement door and descended. Standard, unfinished basement, concrete floor, exposed beams, exactly what they'd seen during the first search. Except Zeus was pawing at the washing machine, an old top-load model that looked 30 years old. Jackson pulled it away from the wall. Behind it, hidden by shadow and strategic placement, was a small door that maybe 3 feet tall, cut into the concrete foundation. Jesus Christ, Laura breathed. Jackson opened it, a tunnel, roughly carved, leading into darkness, just wide enough to crawl through. This must lead to another property, Laura said. Martha could have been accessing a neighboring basement, somewhere we didn't think to search. Zeus entered the tunnel without hesitation. Jackson followed. Flashlight in one hand, weapon in the other, the tunnel was claustrophobic, pressing in from all sides. Dirt fell on his shoulders. The air was stale and thick. After 30 meters, the tunnel opened into another basement. This one had been converted into a living space. Mattress on the floor, water bottles, medical supplies, and tied to a support beam. Unconscious but breathing Emma. Jackson's heart nearly burst. He ran to his daughter, cut her bonds, checked her pulse, strong and steady, sedated but alive. Emma, sweetheart, wake up. Please wake up. Her eyes fluttered. Dad, I'm here. I've got you. Zeus stood guard at the tunnel entrance, growling. Footsteps approached from upstairs. Someone was in the house above them. Laura and her team came through the tunnel. Go, she told Jackson. Get Emma out. We'll handle whoever's up there. Jackson carried his daughter back through that terrible tunnel, Zeus leading the way. Emma drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling about needles and a kind voice telling her she was going home to a better father. They emerged into Martha's basement just as Laura radioed from the house above. Jackson, you need to see this. He settled Emma with paramedics who'd arrived, then went upstairs. The house belonged to Martha's elderly mother, Agnes Hayes, 86 years old, bedridden with dementia, and completely unaware that her basement had been converted into a prison. Martha was using her mother's house, Laura explained. The property shares a lot line with Martha's place. She probably dug that tunnel years ago, maybe when she first got involved with Thorn. But something felt wrong. Jackson walked through the house, Zeus at his side. The dog was still agitated, still searching. In Agnes Hayes's bedroom, Zeus stopped at the closet, barked once. Jackson opened it. Normal old woman clothes, shoes, boxes of moth-eaten linens, and in the back corner, a safe. The safe was unlocked. Inside a journal, Martha's handwriting, entries dating back 3 years. Jackson read, his blood turning to ice. The journal documented everything: Martha's obsessive love for Dr. Thorn, her willingness to do anything for him. But the most recent entries were different. William is weak. He thinks he can stop with Emma, but I know better. She's perfect. Grace reborn. If William won't take her, I will. I'll finish what he started. I'll give him the daughter he deserves, whether he wants her or not. The final entry, dated this morning. I took Emma. William will understand eventually. Once she's been with us long enough, once she forgets her old life, she'll be ours. The perfect family. Martha was acting alone, Jackson said. Thorn didn't order this. She went rogue. Laura's radio crackled. We've got Martha Hayes in custody. Found her at the bus station trying to leave town. They brought Martha back to the station in handcuffs. When she saw Jackson, she smiled serenely. Emma's safe, Martha said. I took good care of her, better than you ever did. You kidnapped my daughter. I saved her from you. William loves her. I love her. We can give her everything. William Thorn confessed, Laura interrupted, to everything. He gave us details about your involvement in all 5 kidnappings. You're looking at life in prison, Martha. The smile faltered. But I did it for him, for us, for our family. He sold you out to save himself, Jackson said. You were never his partner. You were his tool. Martha's face crumpled. The delusion shattered. She began screaming wordless, anguished sounds that echoed through the station. Jackson turned away. He'd heard enough. He just wanted to see his daughter. Emma was awake in the ambulance, Zeus lying beside her on the stretcher. When she saw Jackson, tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm sorry I was mean to you. I'm sorry I pushed you away. If I'd been nicer, maybe none of this—" "Stop!" Jackson climbed into the ambulance, gathered his daughter in his arms. "None of this is your fault. None of it. You hear me? She said you didn't want me anymore. Said you were relieved when Mom died because we were too much trouble. Said der Thorn would be a better father. She lied about all of it." Jackson pressed his forehead against Emma's. "You're the only thing keeping me alive. Sweetheart, you and Zeus. You're everything." Emma clung to him, and Zeus pressed against them both. And for the first time in 2 years, they felt like a family. But as the ambulance pulled away, Jackson looked back at the police station where Dr. Thorn and Martha Hayes sat in separate cells. The monsters had been caught. The children were safe. So why did Jackson feel like the nightmare wasn't over? Emma stayed overnight at Millbrook General for observation. The sedatives Martha had used were strong but not lethal, designed to keep Emma compliant during transport. By morning, she was medically clear, but psychologically shattered. Jackson never left her bedside, and Zeus stationed himself at the foot of her hospital bed like a sentinel. "I want to go home," Emma whispered, as dawn light filtered through the window. "Soon," Jackson promised. "The doctor wants to make sure—" "Dad, please. I can't stay here another minute. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that basement." Jackson understood. He signed the discharge papers against medical advice and took his daughter home. The house felt different now, violated. Emma wouldn't go into her bedroom, couldn't even look at the window where Martha had entered. She set up camp on the living room couch with Zeus pressed against her side, and that's where she stayed. Jackson didn't sleep. He sat in the armchair watching his daughter breathe, terrified that if he looked away for even a second, she'd disappear again. On the second day home, Detective Laura Bennett arrived with a file box. "The district attorney wants you to know they're pursuing maximum sentences," she told Jackson in the kitchen while Emma slept. "Der Thorn, Martha Hayes, and Chief Barrett. Barrett's being charged obstruction of justice, accessory after the fact, child endangerment. He knew about the kidnappings and did nothing. The DA is pushing for 20 years. Jackson felt no satisfaction. Dave Barrett's son, Tommy, was alive because of his father's silence. But Lily and Jake had suffered longer because of it. 2 children had died years ago. Their cases never solved because Dave had hidden the truth. "What about Tommy?" Jackson asked. "How's he doing?" Laura's expression darkened. "Not well. He's developed severe Stockholm Syndrome. Keeps asking to see Dr. Thorn. Says the doctor is his real father now. That Chief Barrett abandoned him." Jackson closed his eyes. The damage Thorn had done went deeper than physical captivity. He'd warped these children's understanding of love itself. "There's something else," Laura said quietly. "Something I need you to see." She opened the file box and pulled out a faded blue collar, the same one Zeus wore. "We found records at the animal shelter. when Ryan Cooper died 10 years ago, he left Zeus there with specific instructions. The dog was to be held until Sarah Miller needed him. The shelter director thought it was strange, but Cooper had paid in advance for Zeus's care, 10 years' worth. Jackson's hands trembled as he took the collar, hand-stitched, carefully maintained, with Ryan Cooper's badge number embroidered inside. "But how did Cooper know Sarah would need Zeus?" Jackson asked. "How did he know she'd—" He couldn't finish. Laura handed him a second letter, this one addressed to Sarah Miller. Unopened. "The shelter director gave this to me. Said it was supposed to be delivered to Sarah if she ever came to claim Zeus. But she never did. She died first." Jackson stared at the envelope. "Should I open it?" "That's your call." He opened it. The letter inside was dated 10 years ago, Ryan Cooper's handwriting shaky and uneven, written from a hospital bed. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've finally come for Zeus. I know I made you promise never to retrieve him unless you absolutely needed him. I know you thought that was cruel, leaving him in a shelter all these years. But Zeus isn't just a dog, my love. He's my promise to you. He's trained to protect, to fend, to save. If the worst happens, if the cancer comes back, or if something threatens our family, Zeus will be there. I've arranged everything when you need him most. When you're at your darkest moment, go to the shelter. They'll release him to you. He'll remember you. Dogs don't forget their families. And he'll protect Emma the way I wish I could. I love you. Sarah, I'll always love you. But I need you to promise me something when you marry again, and you will, because you're too full of light to stay alone. Tell your new husband about Zeus. Tell him that this dog is my final gift to both of you. Tell him to trust Zeus with everything. The dog knows things we don't. He sees things we can't. He'll save you when you need saving. All my love, Ryan." Jackson read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. Sarah had never gone to the shelter, had never told Jackson about Ryan's promise. She'd kept that part of her past locked away, maybe from grief, maybe from fear that Jackson would feel like a replacement husband. But when Sarah died, the shelter had released Zeus anyway, following Ryan's backup instructions. If Sarah dies without claiming Zeus, release him to her family when they need him most. The shelter director had called the police station asking for Jackson Miller by name, saying a case needed placement. Chief Barrett had assigned Zeus to Jackson, thinking it was routine. It hadn't been routine. It had been destiny. "Ryan Cooper knew," Jackson whispered. "Somehow he knew Sarah would die young. Knew his family would need protection. And he made sure Zeus would be there." Laura nodded. Cooper was a good cop, good instincts. Maybe he sensed something when Sarah's cancer first appeared. Or maybe— She paused. Maybe love is just that powerful. Jackson folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket. "I need to visit someone." He left Emma with Laura and drove to the Millbrook Cemetery. Zeus in the passenger seat. They walked to Sarah's grave, a simple headstone under an oak tree. Jackson hadn't visited since the funeral, hadn't been able to face the finality. He knelt in the grass, Zeus sitting beside him. "Sarah," Jackson began, his voice breaking, "I've been so angry at you for leaving, for dying, for not fighting harder. But you did fight, didn't you? You fought to give Emma and me one final gift, Zeus leaned against him, warm and solid. Ryan sent Zeus to protect us, but you made sure he'd get to us when we needed him most. You knew I'd fall apart, knew Emma would need someone stronger than her broken father, and you made sure we'd have help. He pressed his hand against the headstone. I found Emma. Zeus helped me save her and 4 other children. We stopped a monster, and we did it because Ryan loved you enough to plan for the worst, and you loved us enough to let that plan unfold. Zeus whined softly, pressing his nose against Sarah's grave marker. Hey, I'm going to take care of him, Jackson promised. For Ryan, for you, for Emma, he's family now, always has been. On the drive home, Jackson made a decision. He stopped at the police station, walked into Chief Barrett's temporary office. Dave had been suspended pending trial, and opened the desk drawer where Dave kept his personal items. At the bottom, under family photos and commendation letters, Jackson found what he was looking for, a sealed envelope addressed to Officer Jackson Miller, dated 6 months ago. He opened it. Jackson, if you're reading this, you figured out I knew about the kidnappings. I won't make excuses. I chose my son over justice, and I'll live with that shame forever. But I need you to know something. Dr. Thorn mentioned Emma to me twice. First time was 3 months after Sarah died. He asked how you both were doing. Said Emma looked so much like Grace it was eerie. Second time was 6 weeks ago. He said Emma was special, that she deserved better. I should have warned you, should have told you to protect her. But I was afraid if I said anything, Thorn would kill Tommy. I chose my son's life over your daughter's safety. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I'm sorry. And if something happens to Emma, it's my fault as much as Thorn's. Dave. Jackson crumpled the letter in his fist. Dave had known Emma was a target and said nothing, had prioritized his own child while putting Emma in danger. He thought about confronting Dave, about making him face the consequences of his cowardice. But what good would it do? Dave had lost everything already, his career, his reputation, his son's love. Tommy refused to see him, still believing Dr. Thorn was his true father. Sometimes the worst punishment is living with what you've done. Jackson drove home and found Emma awake, sitting with Zeus. She'd showered and changed clothes, but her eyes were still haunted. Dad, can we talk? Jackson sat beside her, suddenly nervous. Of course. I've been thinking about Mom. Emma's voice was soft. About how she died and how we both just stopped living after. How we became strangers. Emma, let me finish. She took a shaky breath. When I was in that basement, when Martha was telling me you didn't want me, I realized something. I believed her, not because she was convincing, but because part of me already believed it. I thought you blamed me for Mom dying, thought if I'd been a better daughter, you wouldn't have fallen apart. Jackson's heart broke. Sweetheart, no, I know that now. I know it wasn't my fault, and it wasn't your fault either. We were both just drowning. Emma looked at Zeus, who rested his head on her lap. But Zeus saved us, not just from Thorn and Martha, from each other, from ourselves. Jackson pulled his daughter close. Your mother sent him to us, her first husband, Ryan Cooper, arranged for Zeus to come when we needed him most. It's the last gift they both gave us. Emma's eyes widened. Mom was married before Jackson told her everything about Ryan Cooper, about the letters, about the promise that transcended death. Emma listened, tears streaming down her face, one hand buried in Zeus's fur. "So Zeus isn't just a police dog," she said finally. "He's family. He's been family this whole time." "Yes." Emma looked at Zeus, really looked at him, seeing him for the first time not as an animal, but as a guardian sent by people who loved them from beyond the grave. "Thank you," she whispered to the dog. "Thank you for not giving up on us." Zeus's tail thumped against the floor. That night, for the first time since Sarah's death, Jackson, Emma, and Zeus had dinner together, not in silence, not with tension, but with conversation. Small talk about Emma's college plans, about Jackson's decision to stay in law enforcement, about Zeus's favorite treats. They avoided the trauma, avoided discussing Thorn and Martha and the basement and the barn. There would be time for that later, in therapy sessions and court testimony. For now, they were just a family, broken, but healing. After dinner, Emma pulled out a box from the hall closet. Inside were photo albums from before Sarah got sick. Pictures of happier times, Emma as a baby, Sarah and Jackson on their wedding day, family vacations, and tucked in the back, a photo Emma had never seen before Sarah as a younger woman, standing beside a police officer in uniform with a German shepherd at his feet, Ryan Cooper and Zeus, before Jackson ever existed in Sarah's life. "She kept this," Emma said, studying the photo. "She never forgot them." Jackson looked at the image of his wife's first husband, a man he'd never met, but owed everything to. Ryan was smiling in the photo, his hand resting on Zeus's head. And even across a decade and death itself, Jackson could feel the love radiating from that frozen moment. She loved him, Jackson said, and that's okay. Love doesn't diminish because there's more of it. She loved him and she loved us. We're all connected. Emma placed the photo on the mantel beside pictures of Sarah, a shrine to the people who'd brought them Zeus, the dog who'd saved them all. As night fell, the three of them settled into the living room. Emma insisted on sleeping on the couch, still couldn't face her bedroom. Jackson took the armchair. Zeus lay between them, a bridge connecting two broken people into something whole. "Dad," Emma said in the darkness. "Yeah, I forgive you. For checking out after Mom died. For not being there, I forgive you." Jackson's breath caught. "You don't have to." "I want to, because holding on to that anger almost cost me everything. Almost cost me you." "I forgive you too," Jackson said. "For shutting me out, for being you angry. You had every right." Zeus sighed contentedly, as if satisfied his humans were finally healing. Jackson closed his eyes and thought about all the things that had to go right for this moment to exist. Ryan Cooper had to die protecting his family. Sarah had to survive long enough to marry again and have Emma. Zeus had to wait a decade. Thorn had to be stopped. Emma had to be found. Any break in that chain, and they wouldn't be here. But they were here, damaged but whole, lost but found. And tomorrow, Jackson would start repaying the debt he owed to Ryan Cooper. He'd protect Zeus until the dog's final breath, just as Zeus had protected them. That was the promise Jackson made in the darkness, with his daughter breathing softly on the couch and a miracle dog sleeping on the floor. They were family now, all of them, together. The trial of Dr. William Thorn began 3 months after Emma's rescue. The national media descended on Millbrook like locusts, turning the quiet Iowa town into a spectacle. Camera crews lined the courthouse steps. Reporters shouted questions at anyone connected to the case. The story had everything they loved: a respected doctor gone wrong, children buried alive, a hero dog who'd saved them all. Jackson hated every minute of it. Emma testified on the fourth day. She walked into that courtroom with her head high, Zeus at her side as a certified therapy animal. The judge had approved at Zeus's presence after Emma's psychologist testified she couldn't function without the dog nearby. Jackson sat in the gallery, watching his daughter face the man who'd stalked her for 18 months. Thorn looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit, older, deflated. But when Emma took the stand, his eyes lit up with that same obsessive gleam. "Emma," Thorn's defense attorney began, "Dr. Thorn never actually touched you. Did he? He kidnapped me. But Martha Hayes performed the physical act of taking you from your home, correct? On his orders. You don't know that for certain, do you? You weren't conscious." Emma's voice remained steady. "Martha told me that Thorn wanted me, that he'd been watching me since my mother died, that he thought I was perfect." Martha Hayes has documented mental health issues. She was obsessed with Dr. Thorn. Isn't it possible she acted alone? Then why does Dr. Thorn have 18 months of photographs of me in his basement? Photos of me sleeping, eating, walking to school. Photos he took himself. The defense attorney had no answer for that. The prosecution played their trump card on day 6. They brought in Tommy Barrett. The boy had spent 3 months in intensive therapy, slowly unraveling the psychological conditioning Thorn had inflicted. He walked to the witness stand like a soldier heading to battle, his mother beside him for support. Dave Barrett wasn't allowed in the courtroom. His own trial was pending. Tommy's testimony destroyed any sympathy the jury might have had for Thorn. "He told me my dad didn't want me anymore," Tommy said. His voice small but clear. Said Chief Barrett was glad I was gone because I was too much trouble. He showed me fake news articles about my dad saying mean things about me. "Did you believe him?" the prosecutor asked gently. "Yes, because he took care of me. He brought me food and water. He talked to me every day. He said he was my real father now." "Did he ever hurt you?" "He gave me shots that made me sleep. Sometimes I'd wake up and not know how much time had passed. Days, maybe. And when I tried to escape once, Tommy's voice cracked. "He showed me the 2 skeletons, the other kids who'd tried to leave. He said that's what happens to children who don't appreciate being loved." The courtroom went silent. Several jurors were crying. Thorn showed no reaction. He sat motionless, staring at Tommy like the boy was a specimen under glass. Lily Connors and Jake Morrison also testified, though their memories were fragmented. Jake still hadn't fully regained his ability to speak. The trauma had damaged something fundamental in him. He communicated through writing, and his testimony was read aloud by the prosecutor. "I thought I was going to die in the dark. I prayed every day for someone to find me. Then I heard barking. Zeus saved my life. He's the only hero in this story." The courtroom gallery erupted in applause. The judge allowed it. On day 8, Martha Hayes testified against Thorn as part of her plea bargain. She'd agreed to 25 years in exchange for full cooperation. She sat in the witness box looking hollowed out, a shell of the warm nurse who'd cared for Sarah Miller. "I loved William," Martha said flatly. "I would have done anything for him. When he told me about Grace, about how her death destroyed him, I wanted to help him heal. So when he said he needed children to care for, to fill the void, I helped him find them. You helped him kidnap 5 children. I helped him save them from neglectful parents." Martha's eyes were distant, unfocused. "That's what he's told me, and I believed him. The Connors family barely saw Lily. The Morrisons were divorcing." Chief Barrett was so consumed with work that Tommy was practically raising himself. These children needed someone who'd put them first. And Emma Miller. Martha's expression finally shifted, something like shame flickering across her face. Emma was different. William became obsessed with her. She looked so much like Grace that it hurt him to see her with Jackson, a father who was drunk half the time, who couldn't even look at his own daughter without crying. William said Emma deserved better. "So you kidnapped her." "I saved her." Martha's voice rose. Jackson Miller was killing himself slowly with alcohol and grief. Emma was drowning in that house. I took her somewhere she'd be loved properly, by drugging her and locking her in a basement. It was temporary, just until she adjusted, until she understood. Martha stopped, seeming to hear her own words. Her face crumpled. "Oh, God, what did I do? What did I become?" She sobbed on the stand-in for 5 full minutes. No one stopped her. The jury needed to see the full scope of delusion that had enabled these crimes. Chief Dave Barrett testified on day 9, led into the courtroom in handcuffs. His own trial wouldn't begin for 2 more months, but the prosecution had granted him limited immunity to testify against Thorn. Dave looked like he'd aged 20 years, gray, gaunt, broken. He couldn't meet Jackson's eyes as he passed. His testimony was devastating. He detailed every conversation with Thorn, every threat, every moment he'd chosen silence over justice. The courtroom listened in horrified silence as Dave described receiving proof-of-life videos of Tommy, each one showing his son alive but pleading for rescue. "Why didn't you come forward?" the prosecutor asked. "Because I'm a coward." Dave's voice was hollow. "Because I convinced myself that if I just waited, Thorn would release Tommy on his own. Because I prioritized my son over every other child in this town." Did Dr. Thorn ever mention Emma Miller specifically? Yes, 3 times. First, he asked how she was doing after Sarah's death. Second, he commented that she looked remarkably like his daughter Grace. Third, Dave's voice broke. "Third, he told me Emma would be next, and I didn't warn Jackson. I didn't warn anyone." The defense had no questions for Dave Barrett. What could they ask? The man had already condemned himself more thoroughly than any cross-examination could. Jackson was called to testify on day 10. He'd been dreading this, reliving the worst moments of his life in front of cameras and strangers. But when he took the stand and placed his hand on the Bible, Zeus lying at his feet, he felt something shift inside him. He told the truth, all of it. He described finding the barn, digging into the earth while people laughed at him, descending into that concrete tomb and seeing 3 dying children, discovering the 2 small skeletons, the terror of Emma's kidnapping, the moment he'd found her tied up and sedated, so close to losing her forever. "Officer Miller," the defense attorney said during cross-examination, "isn't it true you were intoxicated while on duty multiple times during this investigation?" Yes. And isn't it true you had substantial gambling debts that pressured you financially? No, that's a lie. Isn't it true your marriage to Sarah Miller was troubled, that you argued frequently about your drinking? Jackson's hands clenched. Sarah and I loved each other. Yes. I drank after she died. Yes, I fell apart. But that doesn't excuse what your client did to 5 children and 2 families who lost their kids forever. I'm simply suggesting that Thorn's actions, while misguided, came from a place of genuine concern for children who appeared to be in neglectful situations. Your client is a kidnapper and a murderer. Jackson's voice cut like steel. He terrorized children. He killed 2 of them through negligence. He stalked my daughter for 18 months and planned to take her permanently. Don't you dare try to paint that as concern. The defense attorney had no further questions. Thorn himself testified on day 12 against his lawyer's advice. He wanted to explain himself, to make the jury understand his perspective. It was a catastrophic mistake. I never meant to hurt anyone, Thorn said calmly, as if discussing a minor misunderstanding. When Grace died, something inside me broke. I looked around this town and saw children being ignored, neglected, treated like inconveniences. I saw Tommy Barrett, whose father worked 80-hour weeks, Lily Connors, whose parents were never home. These children were suffering in plain sight. So you kidnapped them, the prosecutor asked. I gave them a safe place, structure, medical care, love. The 2 children who died, Ethan and Sophie, that was tragic. I miscalculated their medication dosages. But I learned from those mistakes. Tommy, Lily, and Jake were healthy when found. I kept them alive in an underground cell with no light. Temporarily, I was preparing proper living arrangements. The cabin was ready. I was going to give them a real home. And Emma Miller. Thorn's expression softened in a way that made Jackson's skin crawl. Emma is special. So much like Grace, the same spirit, the same beauty. She deserves a father who can see her clearly, who isn't blinded by grief. I could have given her everything. You stalked a teenage girl. I protected her from a distance. Jackson Miller was self-destructing. Someone needed to watch over Emma. By planning to abduct her, by planning to save her. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found Dr. William Thorn guilty on all counts: 5 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 1 count of stalking, multiple drug charges. The sentencing hearing was set for 1 week later. Martha Hayes received her 25 years. Chief Dave Barrett received 15 years for obstruction of justice and child endangerment, a lighter sentence than expected because of his cooperation, but enough to destroy whatever remained of his life. Thorn's sentencing packed the courtroom beyond capacity. The judge allowed victim impact statements. Liam Foster's parents spoke first, describing the 4 months they'd believed their son was dead. Lily Connor's mother sobbed through her statement about her daughter's nightmares. Jake Morrison's father, a man who'd barely held his composure throughout the trial, described how his son might never speak normally again. Tommy Barrett's mother spoke without her husband. She described visiting Tommy in the psychiatric facility where he was receiving treatment, how her son still sometimes asked for Dr. William and believed his real father had abandoned him. You didn't just take our children's freedom, she said, staring at Thorn. You took their ability to trust, to love, To believe the world is safe. That's a theft you can never return. The parents of Ethan Walsh and Sophie Chen, the two children who died, spoke last. They'd waited years for answers about their missing children, had hope beyond hope that somehow they were alive. Learning their babies had died in darkness, buried in an unmarked grave, had destroyed them. "You're evil," Ethan's mother said simply. "There's no other word. You're evil, and I hope you suffer every day for the rest of your life." The judge gave Dr. William Thorn 5 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. He would die in prison as they led him away. Thorn looked one final time at Emma, sitting in the gallery with Zeus beside her. He smiled, gentle, paternal, completely insane. "I would have been a good father to you," he said. Zeus lunged, barking with a fury Jackson had never heard before. It took 3 bailiffs to restrain the dog. Emma buried her face in Jackson's chest, shaking. "He can't hurt you anymore," Jackson whispered. "Never again." 3 months after the trial ended, Millbrook began to heal. The media left. Life returned to something resembling normal. The Hutchinson barn was demolished, and in its place, the community built a memorial garden. They called it Grace Memorial Garden, not after Grace Thorn, but after the grace that allowed 5 children to survive. The garden featured a statue of a dog, cast in bronze, sitting alert and watchful. Beneath it, a plaque read, "In memory of those who protect us without words, and in honor of the children who survived the darkness." Zeus attended the dedication ceremony, wearing a medal the town council had commissioned. He sat patiently while the mayor praised him, while children petted him, while cameras flashed. But his eyes never left Emma and Jackson. Later, after the crowd dispersed, Jackson walked through the garden with his daughter and their dog. Emma knelt by the bronze statue and ran her fingers over the inscription. "Mom would have loved this," she said. "She would have." Jackson agreed. "She always said the world needs more grace." Emma stood and linked her arm through her father's. "I got into college, full scholarship, psychology program. I want to help kids like Tommy, like Jake, kids who've been through trauma." Jackson's chest swelled with pride. "Your mother would be so proud of you. I'm so proud of you." "I'm scared," Emma admitted. "Scared of leaving you alone. Scared of nightmares." Scared Thorn was right about me being damaged. "You're not damaged. You're healing. And you're not leaving me alone. I've got Zeus." Jackson looked down at the dog. "We'll be fine. We'll visit every weekend. And when you're ready, when you finish school, maybe you'll come back to Millbrook. Help kids here." "Maybe," Emma smiled, the first genuine smile Jackson had seen in months. "Or maybe you and Zeus will come to me. New start, new city, new memories. Wherever you go, we'll follow." That evening, Jackson stood in his kitchen, making dinner, actually making dinner, instead of ordering takeout or drinking it. Emma set the table, humming something Tara used to sing. Zeus lay in the doorway between them, watching both his humans with contentment. The financial burden had eased. The town had raised money for the families of the victims, including Jackson and Emma. The mortgage was paid off. Emma's college tuition was covered. For the first time in 2 years, Jackson could breathe without drowning in debt. More importantly, Emma called him Dad again, consistently, naturally. The wall between them had crumbled. They ate dinner together, talking about Emma's college plans, about Jackson's decision to work with a K-9 training program to honor Zeus's legacy. They talked about Sarah without crying, sharing happy memories instead of mourning. After dinner, they started a new tradition. Emma called it gratitude time. Each night, the three of them would share 3 things they were grateful for. I'm grateful for this scholarship, Emma began, for therapy helping me process everything, and for Zeus, who saved my life. Zeus's tail thumped. I'm grateful for second chances, Jackson said, for a daughter who forgave me, and for a dog who came back from the past to save our future. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that comes from peace rather than pain. Emma pulled out her laptop and showed Jackson the dorm room she'd been assigned, the classes she'd registered for, the campus map. Jackson listened, engaged, present in a way he hadn't been for 2 years. He asked questions, made jokes, helped Emma plan. Zeus fell asleep on the couch between them, snoring softly. The old dog was 7 years old now, with gray in his muzzle and a limp from the beating Martha had given him. But he was home. He was loved. He'd completed the mission Ryan Cooper had sent him to accomplish a decade ago. Later, Jackson stood at Sarah's photo on the mantel, the one next to the picture of her with Ryan Cooper and young Zeus. "We made it," Jackson whispered. "Emma's safe. She's thriving. We're a family again. Ryan's plan worked. Your love saved us." He could almost hear Sarah's voice in his head, warm and gentle. "I knew it would. I knew Zeus would find you when you needed him most." Jackson placed his hand on the glass covering Sarah's face. "Thank you for loving me. Thank you for Emma. Thank you for Zeus. Thank you for everything." Emma appeared beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Think they're watching Mom and Ryan. I know they are. Then they know we're okay now. They know we're going to be okay." Jackson wrapped his arm around his daughter. "Yeah, we're going to be okay." Zeus joined them, pressing against their legs. The 3 of them stood in the living room, a broken cop, a traumatized girl, and an old dog, but somehow, together, they were whole. The barn was gone, the monsters were caged, the children were healing, and in the quiet moments before sleep, Jackson Miller finally understood what grace meant. It meant forgiving yourself for failing. It meant accepting help from unexpected places. It meant trusting that love, even love from the past, even love from people long dead, could reach forward through time and save you when you'd lost the ability to save yourself. Grace meant Zeus, and Zeus meant family. Always had, always would. If you've ever felt the weight of loss so heavy you thought you'd never stand again, this story is for you. Jackson Miller lost his wife, lost his daughter's trust, and lost himself in grief that swallowed everything whole. He became the father who couldn't meet his child's eyes, the man who set 2 coffee cups each morning knowing one would go cold untouched. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've sat in that unbearable silence where love once lived. But here's what Jackson learned through Zeus. Through darkness, through nearly losing everything, it's never too late to come home to the people who need you. Grace isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up broken and trying anyway. It's about accepting help from unexpected places. About letting love reach across impossible distances to pull you back from the edge. The barn wasn't empty that day. It was waiting for someone to listen, to care, to trust what seemed impossible. Your life might feel empty right now, but maybe it's just waiting too. Waiting for you to trust again, to reach out, to let yourself be saved. What moment in your life felt like an empty barn that turned out to hold everything? Have you ever had someone, person, or animal refuse to give up on you when you'd given up on yourself? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.